like I said, sent in by Nomar Sanabria, which they also included a reference image for us. So not a full body sculpt, but pretty much just sculpting everything that can be seen in our reference. So cool. Let's check out what Nomar said. Nomar says, "Hello, Mr. Follygon. How professional of you. I've been using ZBrush for a year, and this is the latest project I'm working on. I'd like to know your general opinion of the sculpt, but I'd like to get some tips on how to improve my anatomy and proportions." Awesome. Thanks in advance, and greetings from Puerto Rico. P.S. The original concept is by Jail96 or Jdilla on Instagram. Go check out Jdilla, everybody, for the original concept artist. But very cool concept, and you got some cool stuff going on here as well, Nomar. So let's take a closer look. So you wanted my first kind of just general opinion, and then anatomy and proportions. So I would say in general, I think you've done a good job on capturing the feeling of the character, but in terms of accuracy and fitting in with the same style, I think there's some room for improvement there, as well as just basic kind of form creation. So I'm actually not going to say too much. I will comment on some anatomical things that we can fix, but for the most part, I think a lot of what you're going to want to correct here is going to be general form correction. So let me turn off all your poly paint here, and let's just look at the form by itself to start. And let's start from the bottom and work our way up. So we'll start down here with the pants, and I'll comment on some of the form here that you have versus some of the form that we're seeing here in our concept. So I see that you have either taken some kind of dam standard or pinch brush combo here and tried to create a few of these quick little folds here. But the feeling that we're getting from the folds in your fabric versus what we're seeing over here, it's not quite the same. You don't have, essentially what you have done here is you have the primary shape of your pant leg, or your legs, and you have sculpted a fold on top, just like this. And then you've maybe smoothed it out a little bit. But what this doesn't account for is some of the additional form that is created around that fold. So let me show you how we can correct some of this. In terms of the primary shape, I think you're also a little bit off here. This doesn't have subdiv, so my move brush is gonna be a little awkward, and it looks like you have two pairs of pants, maybe? Oh no, that's the leg underneath. Let's do this. I'm gonna chop off your legs just so we can move our pants a little bit better. So if you look at this line coming down, this is a relative straight, so straight and then a little bit of a curve there. Whereas if you look at your shape, it's pretty much just a curve all the way down. So I'm just gonna take a big move brush, get a little bit more of a straight there, and then a little bit more of a curve on the quad there. I think as we rotate around, there's obviously a lot more that we can correct, but I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about just the primary forms of your pant leg alone. I think there's a lot more to correct there. You do have the general shape of like the hips swinging out this direction. You can kind of see that going on with the hips there. Just make sure that you're paying attention to where that form is turning. And basically what's happening here, you have the head of your femur like right here syncing up. So we got the flat of the hip coming down, and then that's where that leg is kind of, that big old femur bone is starting. So maybe looking at a skeleton can maybe help you interpret kind of what's going on in the surface, but I would say more so pay attention to your reference than anything else. That's going to inform more of your decision makings. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about the folds here. So again, what you've kind of done is kind of gone a little just stuck on here, whereas instead, let's say for instance, I'll do 1, 2, and we'll do both of these folds. What we got more so going on here, and this is a little tough to work with for the geometry, but I'll try to make it work. We got this big kind of fold coming down here. Just make sure you're looking at that reference to stay accurate. then it curves off this way, right? So we got a 1, 2, and 3 little piece on the end, but we don't want to just sculpt in the fold by itself, right? That feels really awkward. We also want to pay attention to some of the form around that, make it feel really integrated well. So we have this kind of negative pinch going on here. So if you're using a pinch brush or a dam standard, you just hold the Alt key or switch your brush to subtractive mode to get the opposite effect there. I am holding the Alt key and a little bit faster, a little bit more of a hotkey there. But yes, we will continue to shape that up down here. I don't know, I think that's more of just kind of the hard shadow. We got some other strokes coming down this way that we probably want to get in there. But then what I would do is after you start to get this form in there, that most basic form, go back through and just make sure that you're getting that feeling really integrated with the rest of the clothing. Rotate around your model, make sure that, you know, things aren't getting too crazy from any one angle. You want that shape to feel the same from every angle. With right now, you got some awkward stuff kind of going on in your pants in general. So I'd probably revisit the primary form here and take it a step back in terms of how warbly and crazy the surface gets here. To help you out, I think there is a great video over on my YouTube channel that would be a ton of help for you that I just released here within the past week. ZBrush projection made easy. I would check out that tutorial. It's going to teach you how to take stuff that's dynameshed, really high poly, and convert it to Follygon. Shush, old me. It's going to teach you how to take high poly dynamesh geometry and convert it to something that's a little bit easier to work with. So let me slap that in chat for you. Sarah, what's going on? Welcome, welcome. Welcome everybody else that is joining us. Continuing on here up the body. Let's just talk about first your torso. Based on what I'm seeing here, there is, let me polygroup that. There is quite a bit more of a separation of form here where you can see that shadow. So you might want to do the same thing with a quick Alt pinch to start getting that to transition a little faster, and then soften that, and then maybe very carefully build up that volume. Again, this is, you might have, oh no, you do have subdivs on this one, so good job on that. But yeah, you might want to just come through here and very gently kind of build that up. Try to get a little bit more of that kind of shadowed area that I'm seeing there. In terms of the basic form, you know, we got a convex curve going in here, but whereas, I'm sorry, yes, you have a convexity going on, whereas the reference has a concavity going on. So pay attention to stuff like that. Really look at that silhouette. I recently released a video talking about hits and breaks and all that good stuff, and I think that would be another great video for you to check out. Some good stuff in there. But let's continue here. I'm just going to push all this in, out of the way. In terms of anatomy, I think there's a lot that can be improved here, which is why I don't really want to talk too much about anatomy. Like up here in the arms, I would say find a reference of a real character and really pay attention to it. I also don't think you're really paying enough attention to your reference here, whereas we can see stuff like coming up in the arm. If you understood the muscle and form here, you might know what to make without looking at the reference, but just kind of pay attention to your reference. I'm going to dynamesh these just to very quickly make this change. Hopefully this isn't super high res. Okay, I think we're good. So coming up here, we can clearly see this line flowing up this way and then disappearing, and that's because this muscle on the forearm actually connects up here. So look at that reference, see how that's kind of flowing up there. So we'll try to blend that a little bit earlier. That's just one thing here. There's a lot of other stuff that we'd want to work on. Up here in the other arm, what it looks like to me is you've made a very quick kind of bend to your arm, and then you didn't really correct the form around that bend. So here's a great example, and sorry I have sleeves on so you can't see my huge guns, but when you bend your arm, look at your bicep, or you know what, put your arm on top of your bicep. So when you bend your arm, stuff starts to change, and that's because muscles are stretching and contracting and changing the way that the the anatomy works or looks. Not how it works, but how it looks. Same thing when you rotate your wrist. Your radius and ulna actually do a little twist. They like rotate around each other. And you can feel this. You just put your arm, like put your hand around your wrist and start twisting your arm back and forth. And you can feel those bones twisting on each other. So there's a lot of stuff that starts to change here when you start bending your arms is the point I'm trying to make. So I would go back and take another pass on these arms, paying attention to stuff like your silhouette and your internal form changes, really looking at that concept. Like for instance here, there's a really strong hit there if we look at that shadow. So we'd want to kind of pinch this up a little bit more and get a little bit of a better form change. Whereas right now this arm is getting way too kind of sweepy through here. So we'll just kind of adjust to that. And there's, like I said, a lot of other things here that you'd probably want to take a look at. But for the most part, really get in here, focus on that concept, and I think that should be a good enough reference for you to at least take it to the next stage. From there, you might want to start looking at references of actual humans for a real anatomical reference. In the shirt, I think you have a lot of the same problems going on with your folds, so I don't think I'll comment too much on that, other than what I said below. Really look at the concept, get the shapes to be as similar as you can. For some of these larger folds, try to think about just the overall form that you have there. Maybe you can look at the shirt that you're wearing. It's not just, a line that's carved in willy-nilly, right? It's not just a simple 1, 2, 3. That's not how it works. It's, if we look at like this one here, it's actually, there's quite a bit of volume to that shape. So you might want to come through with a standard brush, a clay brush, any of those, and really start to build up that form quite a bit more. So that's what I would recommend in terms of other notes on your folds. I think that'll start getting these to the next level, but I just spit all over my tablet. Fantastic. There's quite a few other things here that we'd want to correct on the most primary level, and for that I would just, again, really take a look at your reference and get in here and pay attention. There's a lot to correct here. So I would say, I think the best way that I would recommend taking a step back and like reassessing information, pop this image, this one over here, into Photoshop. And one way that I find really informative for me to just kind of understand some of the form is do a quick draw over. Just create a new layer, take your brush, and start outlining your form. And then maybe outline some of your folds and kind of think more about how the larger shapes are working there. I think that'll really help you out. Moving up, we'll continue up here, up into, let that quick save do its thing. In terms of the hair, we'll start here. In terms of the hair, I think the most basic shape is still a little bit weak and kind of all over the place. It's not super controlled. And I would say don't worry about that too much because that's something that I think comes with time. Do make sure that you're not adding anything that's not present in the reference. I'm not seeing that strand there. That's just a little note, something to pay attention to. But in terms of the most primary shapes that you have going on here, a way that you might want to kind of take these back a step is do a quick Z-remesh. It's under, well, I think you know how to do this probably, but under Tool Geometry, Z-remesh, and I'll just do we'll do, you know what? No, I won't even do a Keep Group Z-remesh. Let's just Z-remesh this entire thing of hair at 1K. And this lowers the poly count to a point where it's a little bit more manageable, but it's also done another thing here. I'll actually lower the poly count even more. So we'll go like 0.5-ish, 0.4-ish. So what this has done is it's actually simplified the surface of your form so that when we start subdividing and smoothing this out, you can see that the shape isn't quite as warbly and crazy and all over the place. But then after you get it to this point, this is when I would take a step back on some of these pieces and maybe use a move brush and something to just come back through and inflate a lot of this crazy stuff. You can also use maybe your inflate brush. There's a bunch of ways to go about doing this. But yes, take it back a step and reassess some of that shape. And then after you get it to a point where the main shapes are feeling a lot better, then I would go through and get some of that, that texture on there. Other than that, I think that's all I'll say about the hair for now. And other things to look at is just accuracy. Like I said, paying attention to the actual form that we have going on here. And I won't say anything about that for now. Let's just go ahead and take a look at your face and some of the stuff that we can do here to correct this. So, proportionally, I think there's definitely some good stuff going on in the face, but in terms of accuracy, it's just not there, right? Just looking at the face comparatively, it's just not looking like the same person, same character. So I think some of the main things that kind of differentiate your character involve, it looks like the shape of her face is quite a bit more rounded. Got a little bit of a plane change right about here. Need quite a bit more volume though coming up through the cheek. Is symmetry on? No, it was not. Oh well. I'll just, here. Let me step back a few. Alright. So we need quite a bit more volume in the cheeks. Your forehead is way too stuck out. Kind of getting a little Neanderthal, whatever. So I'll just push that back a little bit. Kind of play with the shape of the head here. It's a little all over the place. Let's see. Kind of clean that up very quickly. I'll try to make these changes as quick as I can. In terms of the shape of the brow, this isn't very well defined, so I would definitely come back through here. And I can kind of see this line running up through the brow where that changes directions. And let's just correct some of this. The shape of your eyes is also not correct, so that's something that you want to probably take a step back on. Yours are much more narrow than what I'm seeing there, as well as just the general shape isn't quite the same. Play around with that a little bit. Really, I think a lot of these changes are going to take a lot more than what I have time for today. Lip shape just isn't correct. Let's see. The line of the mouth is a lot more flat, and then the actual shape of the lips are a little wonky. I can see that you've tried to pull some of that form down there for that muscle of the lower lip, but really there's not too much of that going on in the face for the reference, so maybe take a step back on that and also reassess just some of the major form changes that you have going on here. There's quite a bit going on with these lips that feel just like a little bit too much, taken a little bit too far. And make sure that you're rotating around, looking at these extreme angles. If we look at the head, that upper lip, like right here, it's almost like a square. It's like this is pulled out there. It feels very awkward. So, I don't really have polygroups or anything here, but we'll just do a quick kind of pull in for that corner. The way you're going to notice a lot of this stuff, though, is by looking at those really extreme angles, really extreme views, and reassessing some of what's going on there. And then you're getting a little narrow through some of this area, so we'll take some of that. As we took some of that out, we'll try to add some of that volume back in around that area. And then let's just make sure that we're getting the actual general shape of the lip correct there. So it's a 1, 2. So 1, 2 across. And then what I would do is start getting some of that volume back in. You might want to consider making a mouth bag for this because her teeth are visible. And right now, with what you have going on, that's just not going to be possible. So I would reassess that. If you are unfamiliar with how to create mouth bags, there are a few different ways. I have a ton of videos where I go through the process and create a mouth bag. Typically, I like to split my upper and lower jaw and then go through and create a cavity in there. So that might be something that you want to try doing. In terms of the rest of this, let me just select our eyelashes maybe. Nope, not going to let me. Being very strange. There we go. So I would turn off those eyelashes and then come through here, really clean up your lid, make sure you're getting something nice and solid and something that feels connected all the way through. Getting a little thick down here as well. The form is a little uncontrolled. That's something that just kind of comes with time as you sculpt a little bit more. Let's make sure we're not getting too hard here. I think what you've done with the nose is all right, but what I don't like is how soft the transition between the nose and the upper lip are. So you definitely want to pull back on this and get a nicer transition between these. So see how it's kind of smoothed out and really soft right now? That's just a typical, by default, when you smooth stuff, that's what ZBrush is going to give you. Start smoothing a shape, it starts to give you this sweeping curve. So again, maybe come back through with your pinch brush, hold that Alt key, and get through on sculpting some of that. But yeah, she's got a cute, tiny little nose, so I think with just a little bit of work, you can push that to the next level. So there are just a couple strokes, and I think that's starting to feel a little bit better already. It's probably still a little bit too fat and the shape isn't quite there, but those are some general little things that I would start doing to push you in the right direction. Other things going on with your face, just kind of major things that I would really take another look at and reassess. Your jaw is starting to like tuck back in pretty far back there. Make sure you have enough volume through there, as well as connecting to your ear. You want this stuff to feel integrated. Your ear is leaning forward where it should be leaning back slightly, following the angle of your jaw. So make sure that that is, the case. Just a quick rotate. I know I'm breaking stuff, but just to illustrate the point, make sure that your head is not getting too crazy here. Again, I think looking at those extreme angles will help you out. Make sure you're not getting these crazy like dip-ins around any of your geometry. But you got a lot of that kind of going on right now. Getting that heavy handed brow shape. And then the shape of your head, it starts to like come in a little bit too fast. I would probably plane out the line that flows back from your corner of your eye socket all the way back, and I think that'll help you square up the head just a little bit. And yeah, I think in terms of just like general stuff, I think all of that will help you kind of push forward on this character. I don't want to give you a million different things to look at, and hopefully I didn't give you too much already, but I think that'll be enough for now. But I look forward to seeing what you do with this character in the future. I'll noodle a little bit longer while we maybe take a look, see if we got any questions. So if anybody has any questions, now would be the time. Pop them in chat, and I will take a look. And Sarah says, I'm wondering how you would sculpt pants like that. Can you make a solid shape hollow, or how is an even wall thickness achieved? I'm used to CAD, so I have no clue how to do something like this in ZBrush. Let's take a quick look. So we got some pants down here. For me, what I would do is not sculpt these hollow. I would actually sculpt them solid, and then if I needed to, later on give them thickness. To show a quick example of how you would do something like that, I will very quickly append a cylinder, and we'll just use this as our example mesh. So say this is your pant leg, right? And you've gone through and you've added subdivision levels and you've, sculpted on this or whatever. Beautiful, beautiful pant leg. So now we want to add some thickness to our pant leg. And let's say this is, Dynamesh, and, it's not super clean, so that's okay. So what I would do to my pant leg, there's multiple ways to go about this, but depending on how the form was looking, you could come through and you could just hollow it out manually and start cutting up some of the form. You do want to make sure you go into your display properties, down in tool display properties, and turn on double. That'll let you see backside facing polys. For a shape like this, just because it's so simple and easy to do, I would probably just cut off the caps really quick with a slice curve brush. Let me try that one more time. So that creates two poly groups, and then I can just select this mesh and run a delete hidden. So now my pant leg is hollow. Yay! Let's do a quick Z-remesh on this. I'll do it as low as I possibly can because it's just something really simple, just so I can finish this demonstration. All right, so now we have our hollowed out pant leg, and then from there, all I would use is my Z modeler brush, Z modeler brush down here. Hover over face, hold the space bar, click extrude, and click target all polygons. Click and drag, and voila, you have some thickness, and you can, choose how thick or how narrow you would like to make that. One thing that you do want to make sure that you do, though, go back down into your display properties and turn off double. See how my geometry looks a little bit weird? That is because my normals are flipped, and to fix that, you just click on flip, and that'll get your polygons facing the correct way. Depending on which way you extrude your geometry, it could flip or not flip your normals. It just kind of depends, but make sure you double check on that, and there you go. That's how I would do that. Obviously, with something a little bit more complex with a pant leg, it would be pretty much the same process, just not on a cylinder. But yes, hopefully that was helpful for you. And hopefully some of the stuff that we looked at for this character here was helpful as well.